We are. Thank you for being here on today's show, Latino Role Models. I'm very, very happy to have a wonderful scientist here who has been very patient with me. We've been working on trying to get the system up and running, and she's even helped me. So I just feel very honored to have a scientist who's working on the Mars rover at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory here with us today. And we're going to sort of go back into her lives, how she evolved and progressed through the educational process and her own personal gains to be able to be in such a wonderful position of doing that. We have Cristina Diaz. She's a local person here in Los Angeles, and we're going to throw a spill out there that she went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. A lot of people don't know it's a very difficult school to get into. And, you know, it ranks one of the top 10 in the nation. People think of Harvey Mudd and Caltech and obviously MIT, but, you know, it ranks up there in the tops. But before we get into the idea of her Mars rover project, let's go back into taking Cristina and finding out about her background, what she was like when she was a kid, and, you know, all the trouble she might have gotten into. I don't know. Let's find out from her. Cristina, thank you for being on our program.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. So I'm actually an engineer and not a scientist.
They're not the same?
No, the very fine difference is if you ask anybody at JPL. But so growing up, I was a pretty curious child, and I had the very wonderful experience of having two parents and grandparents on both sides for that matter, that really valued education. And the thing with that is that I basically had the world at my fingertips. My mom would take me to the library. I still remember every single museum trip she would take me to, like the La Brea Tar Pits or the art museums in downtown LA. And I just always had this knack for learning. And eventually that developed for a love of math and science, because I feel those are two subjects that naturally really harness curiosity. The other thing that I really liked about my childhood was that my parents never got tired of hearing my questions. So my mom, she was telling me a story a few years ago about when I was learning about the clouds in science and what types they were and how rain was created. She inadvertently learned the names of the clouds, because when I was in the car, when she would be picking me up from school, I would say, "Oh, Mom, like, that's a cumulonimbus cloud," and I would just start pointing them out. And she was very supportive of my silly questions.
Well, we weren't silly at the time, obviously. You know, there's a big subject, big topic about getting more women, Latinas, females, you know, in the STEM areas. You obviously are right in the middle of it. But, you know, did you as a child find yourself sort of being questioned? Why are you doing math? Why are you doing sciences? Why are you so involved in, you know, the scientific world? Did you experience any kind of sort of what I may call even bullying, trying to get you?
I would say that it depends to what degree of severity. So when I was, let's say, in middle school, it really started to sort of sink into my brain that, oh, like, I really liked math and science. I mean, I was the kid who would go home, watch those after-school PBS shows like Bill Nye the Science Guy, Nova, and they had a bunch of like animal shows. My father was also studying to be an electrical engineer. And so naturally, he tried to push me to become an electrical engineer or get into engineering. So I was fortunate in the sense to have somebody in my life who I trusted and who I especially looked up to, my father, to have this idea that I could be an engineer because I'm just like Dad. I'm Daddy's girl. I can do whatever he does. But it wasn't until maybe when I was in college when I actually started to feel not so much questioned, but a little bit out of place. So I went to a small little Catholic school from K through 8th. And then I went to a high school, California Academy of Math and Science in Carson, California. It's actually on Cal State Dominguez Hills. Okay. And so that was a very special program because it pulled all the kids in the Long Beach and Los Angeles Unified School District who were interested in math and science and who were kids who really had this high potential to achieve to go into these Ivy Leagues or these top performing universities.
So you were somebody in Haven, were sort of protected, where you could keep going and not have to.
Right. I never felt ostracized for being a nerd. If anything, I learned to embrace my geekiness, and I became geekier as I progressed through grad school and eventually ended up working for NASA. So I think I've never really been questioned as to, oh, well, you're a girl, like your husband's the one who's supposed to be an engineer, or you're going to end up being a housewife. I've never had those reactions, but I think it's also my personality that developed through starting to feel more confident about my career or what I was pursuing. I think that really helped a lot because nobody dared to question my want to be an engineer.
And then I would assume that your tests kept coming up, that you were able to handle the material. So it wasn't a question like, you can't do it or it's not in your potential. I mean, obviously you guys were taking a lot of math courses. You guys were taking theoretical trig or, different classes. So, I mean, to be able to do it, obviously you had to have the passion for that. Now, why did you end up selecting going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo?
Yeah.
And then when did the idea of working for Jet Propulsion - NASA come into your mind?
So when I was little, I watched the show called Nova, and Nova is very famous for showing all kinds of documentaries when it comes to science and technology. And it's about an hour-long program. I don't know when it comes on anymore, but back then it was on Wednesday evenings. And I would watch it and learn about all these things that scientists and engineers all the problems that they were solving. And one episode really struck me because they were featuring the folks at Jet Propulsion Laboratory when they were working on Cassini, which was a spacecraft that we sent and is still in orbit around Saturn. And it really sunk in like, oh, JPL, that's by my house, like in Los Angeles.
Down the street, yeah.
Send things to space, like, oh, like, okay, like I kind of just made that memory. And then throughout middle school and the early high school, I wanted to be an electrical engineer because that's what Dad was, and Dad was cool, so naturally that's what I was going to do. And so I joined the robotics team, which CAMS had. It was extracurricular through FIRST Robotics, where students basically build a robot that has to go through a certain obstacle course and compete nationwide. And so I was on the electrical team, so you get to learn how to build circuits and strip and crimp wires, how to solder. So I was learning all these hands-on skills.
You're there and cutting.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, messed up, try again. And so it was a very nurturing environment for that. And through robotics, I was able to get an internship at Northrop Grumman Aerospace Systems in Redondo Beach. And so that was the point where I think in discussing with my parents, because my parents are people who I'm very fortunate that I can talk to them about the work environment, career development, because they're both two people that have careers. And so it was then where they made me realize this was the first step in the right direction. And they told me to really try and use all the opportunities at Northrop to develop what I wanted to do as an engineer. And it was at Northrop Grumman where I got to help on this project called LCROSS. And it was a satellite or spacecraft that was going to crash into the southernmost crater of the moon and try and see if there was water. And so for me, as a high school student in this engineering environment that was mostly a white men, but I mean, that's the aerospace industry. I was fortunate to meet people who were great mentors. And they were telling me, oh, you should meet the scientist for LCROSS. And he happened to be an aerospace engineer. And so it was him, in talking to him and me projecting myself in his shoes, that I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to be able to make science practical by being an aerospace engineer. I can build a spacecraft. I can send something to the moon. And maybe now I can send something to Mars. So it was kind of just me figuring out personally. I'm a person who is very introspective, so I like to see, where do I see myself? Do I see myself as this person or on their career path? And so it was then where I broke the news to my dad, electrical engineering, not my thing, but maybe aerospace. I think that would be something that I'd like to do. And it was at Northrop that I spoke to some great mentors that I have, and every now and then I still see them on recruiting trips, that they said Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is a great university. Right. It's affordable, and I mean the tuition issue is another story, another conversation. But relative to all the other state universities and the quality of engineering education, it was a fantastic choice. So that's where I decided to go, and I signed up for aerospace engineering.
Wow, that's wonderful. I want to share with you how thrilled I am. You keep mentioning Northrop. My father retired from Northrop. He was a technical engineer, and he worked on the F-17 and then F-18 projects. So, you know, it's a small world. There's a lot of connections with that, and I love the whole world of aircraft, and that's a special area for me. That's how I came across. I do want to take a moment to highlight and thank the Latino group at JPL. It's a very small group, but it's a very strong group. And also our friend, Dr. Alfonso Feria, for putting us together and networking. Like you said, we have mentors, we have persons that work along with each other. We should always credit them because they're the ones that make a lot of things possible.
No, definitely.
Now, when you were at Cal Poly Pomona, San Luis, man, I'm going to have all kinds of, I'm going to get all kinds of emails. I want to get all kinds of people. I could have said something else, but okay, we'll go with that. San Luis Obispo, thank you. And when being up north in mid-California, how did you get in contact with Jet Propulsion and say, hey, you know, here I am, I want to be part of this project?
Yeah, so JPL would come every so often to go recruit at Cal Poly SLO. We have these huge recruiting campaigns where we say, okay, what are the schools where we really want to harness and try and get people from? And we send engineers, people from HR, we send hiring managers and early career hires, or ECHs, which is what I am, to kind of get all different aspects of what it's like to work at JPL. So while going through the aerospace program, because I was with people who also were obsessed about space, we were constantly trying to figure out, okay, when's JPL going? Have they had any internships? What's the deal? And so I was also a part of SHIP throughout the time. And this was, I think, my freshman year. By then I had 2 summers under my belt at Northrop Grumman. And I went to the conference. And I spoke with somebody at JPL about being interested in an internship. At the time, though, my GPA was not great. And it was at a point in the university system where I was really struggling in school, because going from high school to college is a whole different challenge besides, I mean, you struggle with your identity, you struggle with being away from your parents, but the curriculum itself is also difficult. So you're just juggling. And I really did struggle my first 2 years. And that's when I think I mentioned in our previous chat with the other ladies that I really struggled to decide if engineering was right for me. So I had spoken to somebody at JPL, and I did get an offer for an internship, but they said the problem is your GPA. So we're not going to be able to continue with this offer. And so that really struck me because I had the opportunity in my hand, and because of my diligence and my discipline, I didn't get it. And so that kind of maybe put me in the hot seat. I'm like, okay, no, like never again is that going to happen. So that was really the turning point, because I knew I had enough on my resume and it was going to keep increasing to get me a second chance for somebody to look at my resume from JPL. But I knew then that I really had to focus on academia and I had to focus on getting my GPA up. And so I basically just progressed, and I kept thinking, if I want to work at JPL, what are the classes that I'm going to have to take? What are the things that they want in somebody who works for them? And so my second opportunity came during grad school year when they came for a hiring campaign, or recruiting campaign rather. And by then my GPA was very nice, and I got selected for an interview. So it was through JPL coming on and off throughout the time, through SHEP, meeting people who work at JPL and kind of getting an idea of what they're like, what they like about the facility. And then finally being prepared, because I do believe there's a lot of luck and timing that goes into it, but you can only snag an opportunity if you're ready for it. And I really came prepared and ready to accept that job offer before I had it because I wanted it. So I was really excited when I got my interview, and I was just crossing my fingers the whole time that it was actually going to work out this time. And it did. So that was really nice.
Just for the benefit of the viewers, who were your competition? Where did these other applicants come from?
Yeah. And I think that was the part where throughout this time, I made some fantastic friends in the aerospace program at Cal Poly, but I always felt a little different. And that's when I really reached out to people in SHEP. So I always felt that I had two identities throughout college. I had the identity where I was like the cold-blooded aerospace engineer who was like, let's just focus on studying. Let's get this done. I can hang with the guys, that personality. But then I didn't get the Latino identity like I did with SHEP and being a part of Cal Poly's multicultural engineering program. So it was a very fine balance for me, and I think I still struggle with it because of now there's a lot of Latino issues that are up for grabs in politics, and we can go into that later. But I've always struggled with my identity. Who am I? Am I more American? Am I more Mexican? Where is that fine line? And throughout in the aerospace program specifically, I felt that my parents couldn't name airplanes off the bat, even though my dad was an engineer. Our parents came from different backgrounds. My parents got their degrees when I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. My parents were the first ones in our family to go to college. And so this is a very different environment. But luckily, I was fortunate the people that I was studying with, they were great. I mean, they were funny, they were smart, but I really did have to change in a way to handle it, to be one of the guys. And that's something that I probably would regret because I really lost a sense of that I'm a Latina. I should be proud to be a woman. I should be proud to be the only one in the room. And if there's more, then that's even better. So it's a struggle because in any case, no matter what situation you're in, if you're the only person and you stand out in a room, it's very like, oh, everybody must notice me because I'm the only red person and everybody else here is blue. I mean, you just stand out. And so it's kind of another ongoing struggle psychologically, not so much that it's actually an issue.
You know, you mentioned, obviously these are very viable issues that, a lot of us confront in different ways. And I'm also thinking of another situation. I was back in Boston. My son was at Harvard, and he introduced me to a 13-year-old from MIT, and she was working on her second doctorate degree. And I think one of them was in engineering. So
that's awesome.
Come to realize that your competition is not only yourself, not only the persons, but you're in an environment where people have 2, 3, 4 PhDs. They're in Caltech, they're at MIT, they're in both. They're consulting the president on scientific issues, and you're sitting right next to them. I'm sure it can be somewhat difficult to say I've got to stay focused on my end of the work. And obviously, Nobel laureates are walking around left and right, telling about nerdy people. So you're in a really I can understand how difficult of an environment is, but you seem to be energized by it, not standoffish about it.
So I think one of the things that I've realized is that the fact that, so the reason why I got a job at JPL is because they wanted me. Like I deserved it. My resume spoke for itself. And I sometimes have to repeat that to myself several times. I'm here because they wanted me. I'm not here by mistake. I'm not here by some HR glitch. I'm not here because I'm a minority and they needed to fit their quota. There's none of that. It's at JPL, you're selected because of what you bring to the table. And it is, if anything, it's more of an honor to be able to be amongst the ranks of people who are 13 and already going for their double doctorate. I mean, there are so many intelligent, smart, and wonderful people at JPL that you are humbled. But at the same time, though, when I was applying, I really had to get that out of my head, because that's intimidating when you go in and thinking, oh, the guy next to me waiting for his interview is from MIT and he has a PhD and I only have a master's. I mean, it's, you know, it'll psych you out.
Right.
But for me, I think the thing that really helps me is drive and passion. I know what I want. I'm a very determined person, but I also know what I want to contribute to the world, and I want to be able to explain science and engineering to the younger generations. And really, when I leave this world, I want to say, like, I was able to contribute to something in human space exploration. Even though I may not discover an exoplanet, I may not do anything that's an individual achievement, the fact that I was part of the process, the fact that I helped drive that change, I think that's very gratifying. And regardless of whether people come from certain universities or have more degrees than me, I feel that I can help out. My skill set is unique, just like everybody else is, and so everybody has something to bring to the table when it comes to this endeavor.
You know, I also would like to highlight, and again, you're used to it because that's where you are. I've been in and out of, you know, JPL on different projects, and one of the things I noticed is that the scientists and the engineers, I finally got it right, they're separate. Thank you, Steve. They're actually around the world. They're not just Americans. I mean, they're coming in from all parts of the world. You're meeting scientists and engineers from every part of the world. Everybody joins in on projects. I mean, you guys work together with the European group. You know, there are Mexican astronauts, what a lot of people didn't know. You're doing satellites and some work for other parts of the world, and there's consulting going by. So it's really a very global activity. It's not just JPL, a few engineers. Am I perceiving this correctly?
Absolutely. And what I love about JPL is that there are so many different cultures and so many different languages that you hear at JPL. You hear Spanish, French, German, Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. I mean, it's such a free environment because what we really appreciate is your intellectual capacity. What do you bring to the table to help us do these really hard things and challenges that we struggle with? And regardless of what religion, race, color, what your background is, where your parents came from, it has nothing to do with it. And I really, that's why I really like JPL, because now I can give back to all of those demographics and say, look, it doesn't matter where you come from. What do you bring to the table? That's what we want to see. And it's really fantastic because on Mars 2020, I get to help out with 2 foreign instruments. One's from Norway and one's from Spain. Right. So the first time in my career, I actually get to speak Spanish. And so my Spanish needs a little bit of work, especially technical Spanish. It's very difficult. But the fact that I get to explore my own culture in the sense of speaking Spanish and then also experience other countries, it's fantastic. But yeah, JPL is a very diverse place, and diversity, whether it's gender, ethnicity, or just your background, that's what makes you think outside of the box. People with different experiences will always approach a problem differently. And so we want all those options. We want to know what everybody else can bring.
I got the chance to interview Dr. Miguel Acuberry from UNAM in Mexico City, and finding out that he's one of the proponents of warp drive. You know, I've been watching Star Trek my whole life. I didn't know it was a Mexican. And like you say, you know, it's a very diverse group. When we talk about engineers and scientists at JPL NASA, it isn't Americans, it's worldwide. And I'm sure that you also probably have to travel out there to see their experiments in Norway and Spain and other places as well. If not, haven't done it, you eventually will have to. So you have to also be able to adapt to cultures.
Absolutely, and you have to be open-minded. And I think that's something that I really do consider myself open-minded because of the people that I've met along the way and my own experiences. So if I experience something, I can only imagine what somebody else might be going through. And that open-mindedness is something that we at JPL really appreciate.
Let's also give our viewers and listeners knowledge that there's actually an open house at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory every year. Obviously, it changes a little bit because of the time, but it's usually in October. And in 2015, tell us when that's available.
Yeah, so it's October 10th and 11th, which is a Saturday and Sunday. And I believe it's from 9 to 4 p.m., but I can post in this Hangout some links so you can get that information. But open house is a fantastic time to be on lab because it's truly open and it's in a state of show and tell. So basically you have people who are the lead engineers or scientists on these missions, and they're explaining to you about their own project. And so that's fantastic because you see kids as young as 1 and 2 running around in astronaut suits, and you see people in their 60s and 70s still going to explore and see what JPL is up to. Last year, I got to take my grandparents, which was very, in a way, emotional for me because when my grandparents first came to this country, they were on their way to immigration facility somewhere in Orange County. And the officer told them, do you know who those people are? There was a parade outside the bus, and it was the Apollo astronauts. And so that story, when my grandmother told me, it kind of hit home because now I can say, look, like right now we're trying to get humans on Mars. And it was very humbling for them. They really enjoyed it. And I mean, it all started with them because they came to this country and they really instilled the sense that education was the path to success. And I am here today. So the fact that I got to show them my job and what I do is really awesome. And a lot of people, a lot of employees bring their friends, their families. We're really open on social media, so we're usually advertising it and sharing pictures. And so it's a great time to be on lab.
It really is. It like I said, I try never to miss it, but I wanted everybody to know. And for 2015, it's October 10th, 11th. Parking's a little bit of an issue, but they really try to accommodate. And it's free.
Right.
It's just an experience, chance of a lifetime. I mean, it really is.
And you can we give out lots of goodies too, like flight patches, stickers. We even have food trucks, so you can get food. And for people who need like handicap accessibility, we have a special parking lot that it's easier to get to. So we try and make it as open to the public so we can get as many people to kind of see what we're doing in this hidden part of LA.
Well, hidden in one sense, geography, but you're always in the news around the world. We're reading about what you're doing all the time. And we're getting close to the end of the show. I know you have to get back to some projects, but let me ask you this question. Do you see yourself staying at JPL when after 2020, after the Mars rover lands, and or do you see yourself going on to other places, other things? So it's pretty much, you know, what are your long-term goals?
Right. So my mind is always open, but from what I've seen so far at JPL, I could see it being a place where I retire 40 years from now and I'm still happy about my job. As a female engineer, I think they have a lot of great flexibility for working moms, for people with who have two careers to juggle with their husband and the wife. And so I really appreciate that because one of my goals is I would love to have a family, but I also want to have a career. I think every woman should be able to have what she wants for herself and her family, and a company that really supports that, that's even better. And besides that, the flexibility with the work-life balance, I'm doing what I dreamed of doing as a kid, and I get to go and tell it to high schools and middle schools. So why not? What's the negative side? And I can't wait to finally, maybe 30 years from now, see somebody walking on the surface of Mars and get to think I helped in that process. So it's a really rewarding and challenging place to be as an engineer. And I think they really do their best to make us happy with having both a work and life balance.
You sound like you have absolutely no regrets of all the hard times and hours that you sacrificed in school, college, grad school. you know, because, you know, you sometimes, I'm sure you didn't get more than 1 or 2 hours sleep, and then you have to jump back into the project. So it
Yeah.
sounds like, you know, there's no regrets in your mind.
And I think it's like that when you find something that you love to do. It's, you see people, whether it's engineering, science, art, politics, when you're passionate about something and you feel that you can contribute, you really dedicate everything that you can to that cause. So I don't necessarily have regrets. I think there's a lot of things that I wish I could have done as a student, maybe ask for help sooner, you know, all those pieces of advice and words of wisdom that you give to people now. But I think the reason why I'm here, the path that it took me, I'm where I'm at, so I don't regret the path that led me here.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Cristina Diaz, who is a systems engineer. I got to get that one right. Systems engineer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, NASA, at here in Pasadena, California, working on the Mars rover for target landing 2020. So this is really what we call medium planning. As we're getting ready to close, Cristina, is there any closing statements you want to share with our viewers, our students? And we're also making this video possible for students in high school and college classrooms.
So I would say no matter what point you are, whether you're in middle school, high school, college, or thinking about doing a career change into the aerospace industry, like a place like JPL, really échale ganas, put all the work ethic that you have and the drive and passion into your craft, because that's really what people are going to notice. When you're not a team player, when you're really difficult to work with, it makes things so much harder. So find what you love to do and really go for it. And there's always a place where you can ask for help. Mentors are fantastic, and people really like telling their story. So I'm sure if you ask somebody, hey, I have a few questions about your career, mind if I buy you a cup of coffee or go out to lunch? People are very open about that. And I'll be posting some links. I think we could post links on this about if you're interested about learning more about the Mars 2020 rover. There's a fantastic video that just came out.
I'm interested.
There's a fantastic video that I actually just posted on my Facebook, but I'll be sure to post it here, about 50 years of Mars exploration. And it just highlights all the missions that we've done at Mars through NASA and JPL. And it's fantastic. It really gets me pumped and excited for 2020 when we launch this rover.
You know, I want to tell you that when they had the Mars rover at the beginning, Dr. Alfonso Feria helped to put together a conference in Spanish there at the convention center. Mm-hmm. And I was one of the persons on the panel. I had Dr. Mario Chang Diaz on my right, and I had the Mexican astronaut on my left, and I thought to myself, why am I here? I was just overwhelmed. But it was the idea that, you know, they're so passionate. They wanted to get everybody involved. The only problem is we didn't have enough time, but you're doing it. You're giving us a 5-year notice that we can be part of this. You know, you've already invited us, so please keep us always involved and keep us abreast and how we can all integrate into the ideas of it, so that it's not such sort of a distant project, but actually through you and through other wonderful members, the Latino and all the employees of JPL, that you're keeping us updated and you're changing our lives. And that's something we don't say very often. You're not only affecting our lives, you're definitely changing our lives. And I can't thank you enough on behalf of all of us for doing that passionate work, because it is important. It's not just exploration, it's exploration of the mind. And
absolutely.
Thank you very much. I wanted to honor you with that. And again, keep us always informed. There's always an open channel, and we'll get more shows together where the students and persons interested around the world can communicate through this kind of programming. So I want to thank you for that. Yeah,
great. And thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to let her go back. She's got to put a satellite, help put a satellite, a rover on Mars. So she's got to get back. 5 years is not that long in this business. Thank you very much. I wish you continued success, and I look forward to having you on future programming.
Definitely. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Adios.